evening, everyone. Welcome to the Planning Board of Tuesday, December 19th. We call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. If we would all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. All right. Our first order of business is a public hearing continued on the application of Route 44 Development LLC, requesting a definitive subdivision approval entitled Definitive Subdivision Plan for Route 44 Development LLC, Route 44 Commerce Park, pursuant to the Carver Subdivision Control Bylaw, for property located at off Green Parkway, formerly known as Montello Street, Assessors Map 20, lots 2, 2-1, and 14, and Map 22, lots 3, 3A, 3B, 3C, 3-1, 4, 5A, 10, 10-1, and 11 in Carver, Mass., showing 4 proposed non-residential lots in the Green Business Park District. All right.
All right, where would you like me tonight? Standing? Over here, maybe?
Over, I think that it'd be best over by the, over there. Yeah.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Zach Richards, professional engineer with Carver Engineering, representing the owner applicant, Route 44 Development LLC. With me tonight, representing the owners, George McLaughlin. And then we have Susan Murphy with Dane Torpy as well. I think I have a pretty brief presentation tonight. I apologize, I didn't have enough time to get the presentation on board, so that's why I've passed out a handout of some of the slides we were looking to flip through, but I'll try to keep it brief. Project team, you remember, just an update on the project history since we were here last. That was our first planning board hearing on November 28th. We did conduct a site walk with the planning board on December 5th, the following week. Generally felt like we got to see what everyone wanted to see. We walked a lot of the limits of the roadway that was staked, some of the future curb cuts. We looked at some of the mitigation that's being proposed in terms of the removal of an existing roadway along the riverfront area, which seemed generally well received, and walked some of those areas of cut. Following that site walk, we went back in front of the Conservation Commission the next night, December 6th, and received an approval at that hearing in an order of conditions, which we'll share with the planning board. And then here we are back in front of the planning board tonight for our second hearing. One piece to add to that is we did receive the peer review letter from Fuss and O'Neill that came in end of last week. We've done an initial review, nothing really of major concern that we saw in that peer review letter. We're working through some updates and revisions addressing those comments and hope to formally respond with an updated plan set like the first week of January, right after the holidays. So that is forthcoming. We did want to just walk through a couple updates and address a couple of the questions that came back up at the first hearing tonight. One of those being construction access and work hours, which was one question that came up. Access itself, as was part of the discussion and as would make sense, is we're proposing, in and out from the site, access from Route 44, and again restricting access in the other direction on Montello and the dirt road portion of that, which I know was a request from the public too, and part of previous discussions for future work on the property. So that an exhibit will follow at the next hearing that we're gonna submit formally with the peer review letter, just outlining that proposed access in and out of the site, talking to some of the construction traffic queuing on site and staging area. And then the hours of construction we are looking to propose is Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., and then Saturday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. Again, restricting, from entering via the Plimpton line and proper erosion sediment controls, as required under the SWIP, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, that will be required for the project, and implementing proper dust control measures, on an as-needed basis as part of that, and minimizing noise impacts, complying with any noise regulations. Jumping over to the lighting design, which was another topic at the initial hearing, just wanted to provide some additional info on those fixtures. I know I mentioned the light pole height of 25 feet. They are low profile LED area luminaires, dark sky compliant, as I mentioned, with no spillover above the horizontal line of the fixture. So pretty much the industry standard at this point. The light pole spacing, as I mentioned, about 80 feet on center. And I included a little graphic there to help you visualize kind of how the light's directed at those fixtures, which is down and outward, again, below the horizontal line. If you flip to the following pages, I thought it would be helpful to visualize really the limits of the light and the foot candles. So we've overlaid a red line on the lighting plans that were submitted with the subdivision that shows all the foot candles and the light levels. That red line is really where you're officially down to 0 foot candles of light levels. So you can see it's very well focused within, right around the roadway right of way, right, and within the subdivision area there. Again, these show, both roadways. There's 4 different sheets there. And we can reshare these at the following hearing, if helpful, on the television upon board community request. But the next sheet after those is just a nice graphic that I think helps in illustrating, in addition to those light levels, the distance to the nearest single-family home and a butter is about 660 feet, as you can see, from that road A. So it's quite a distance away from the proposed roadway lighting and improvements. With that, again, I wanted to kind of keep it short and sweet, but hit on some of that, some of the questions that we had at the last hearing. Let you know that we received the peer review and had no major concerns. We're working to try to turn that around as quickly as we can to keep things moving. And then happy to answer any other questions that the board may have. So thank you again for the time tonight.
Thank you, Zach. Mr. Bott, it seems we received a letter from the North Carver Water District. It was sent to you. I'm sorry. Jill sent it, CC'd you, but apparently it was sent to me and the RDA chair. Did the board receive copies of that?
I'm looking at you like I got that, so apparently you didn't, because I don't think I.
Okay, if you can pass that one on down. I want to make sure that the members and the applicants receive a copy of that. All right, you haven't had the opportunity to respond to, fully respond to Mr. Glein's peer review?
Yeah.
All right. Oh. How many infiltration basins are there, Andy?
2.
2. And we're looking at putting monitoring wells on each of those.
Yeah, 2 per infiltration basin, just due to the size of the subdivision. I think it'd be reasonable to have, 1 on either end of the larger infiltration basins, knowing that there is, I don't know if they're still active, but there was other monitoring wells that were installed on the property. I think specifically we want 2 adjacent to the stormwater basins for this property. And I guess I don't know if the applicant wants to weigh in on that.
Fine.
Yeah, and expand by saying we're reviewing that with our environmental folks on our team,
So
just
if
to
I can
understand.
just interject for a second.
Sure.
Every time you say something, tell folks who you are for our minute taker,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
So I know we'll hear it, George, the name and your name frequently, that's okay.
Yeah.
Susan is gold. We want to make sure she's taken care of, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
of course.
So you were
So
saying?
again, yeah, Zach Richards with Bowler. We're reviewing that request with the environmental team, as well as, with respect to what coverage we have, what monitoring wells are there, but we don't anticipate that to be an issue, and we'll respond accordingly. So.
Were there any monitoring wells in regards to the contamination issue that was closed out?
Not that I had understood in that area, but again, that's something we could provide a little more clarity on, I think.
Well, again,
Yeah, no, Andy Glines with Fuss and O'Neill. Not knowing exactly how many wells were actually installed and if previous wells installed would be functional, just wanted to make sure that these would be project specific for this definitive plan, where in other instances, other projects in town, if there were wells already installed, in the vicinity of property, then, we may not have required additional wells to be installed. But for this instance, there, it may be a situation where future development projects, when they come in for site plan review and special permit, depending on what's proposed on those individual lots, it may make sense to have additional wells proposed for that. But specifically for the basins proposed for the stormwater management for the road that's proposed currently, I think 4 total wells is appropriate.
excellent. Do the proposed hours of construction align with the fill management plan?
Yes, as the
Excellent.
applicant stated in the presentation this evening, those hours are consistent with what was, I guess, previously approved by another, I guess it was really a different applicant for the soil remediation, but I figured since those hours were approved previously by the town, it'd be applicable to, keep those same.
Yeah,
hours.
they seem reasonable. Now, at the last meeting, we requested you do an engineering study based on the requirements set forth by the state certificates.
So, yes, Fuss and O'Neill has copies of the state reports. I have read through them, and I guess after discussions with the town planner, and currently how I have it written in the comment memo is Fuss and O'Neill didn't provide specific comments regarding the state reports, but we will be involved in the town's coordination with those state entities moving forward. So we'll be able to provide input and recommendations to the town planner as well as the planning board as necessary to make sure that any conditions of approval that the planning board includes in their decision isn't conflicting with any of the state requirements. But I didn't want to overstep my review by interjecting into the state review and their regulatory jurisdiction, so.
Right. We don't want to overstep those bounds either. That's why we asked you to do an engineering report based on their engineering report and requirements. So I want to make sure that we're not approving anything that isn't otherwise allowed under.
Yeah, my understanding to date, what the applicant has submitted and I guess pending response to the comments that we've issued, there wouldn't be any conflict with prior state approvals. But I guess, Mr. Bott, if you want to weigh in, as I understand there's a future meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been in regular contact with the folks at MIPA. Initially on July 14th during the preliminary plan, as well as revision plans, again on July 27th, and then most recently With this application, let's see. Yeah, so July 14th, beginning of September, and most recently after our last meeting, I forwarded them all the information that we have collected that's on our website. So all the information that's come in to the planning board, I've shared with the folks at MIPA, and we are looking to set up a meeting just to keep abreast of what's going on, so they're aware of what's happening as well as us.
You're setting up a meeting with them?
We've been trying that a couple of different. They have a widget that you schedule meetings for, and it's we've gone back to doing phone tag to try to set up a meeting at this point. Likely after the first year, considering the holiday schedule, but we're trying to squeeze something in.
Prior to the date of our legislative requirements, 90 days?
Yeah, so that date is the date that the planning board has to render a decision on the preliminary subdivision plan, unless that date is extended by mutual consent of both the applicant and the board. But I think we're in pretty good shape. They've done a fair amount of due diligence beforehand. They've been communicating with boards and departments right along. So I don't see much of a holdup past July 9th, past January 9th. But if we get to that point, it wouldn't be unusual for something to be extended by mutual consent in order to get to those things. But I think we're on a path to get to that by that date.
Well, the date is January 9th for the last meeting that pretty much we were available to discuss this prior to the...
Yeah, so if we're not ready to vote on January 9th, and likely before we get to that point, I'll have discussions with the applicant about whether they were interested in entertaining an extension. But I think we're in pretty good shape to get to that point based on the work that they've done to date.
All right. Have we received any sort of project change notification from MIPA?
There is no project change. The project that has been submitted under the FEIR was for the warehouse space that isn't going to be built. And so until something new is proposed for the site, there's no project change. We're doing a subdivision, as I talked before, is essentially the roadways and the lots. That is not a discretionary permit. That's what the planning board does through subdivision control. And we get into those discretionary permits for special permits and site plan approval. That's where we get into siting buildings, and those various thresholds in the FEIR start to kick in.
Well, this project is urban renewal project, and as such falls under the authority of various state and federal agencies in regards to that. One of the changes being proposed is multiple septic sites or septic plants in regards to this project, as opposed to what is originally stated as a singular plant to handle 38,000 gallons per day and requires a federal discharge permit. That's a change to that plan. So even though the original plans were conceptual in nature, there has been a modification to the plan at the very least that should be addressed under the state and most likely federal laws under which this was approved.
I beg to differ. At this point, it is a subdivision, and I've mentioned this on several different occasions. This is where the roadway are going to be. These are where the lots are going to be. These are where the water lines and the drainage and the electrical and the utility lines are going to be. There is no project, and there's no change in a project. The project that is on record is essentially dormant. If for some reason the stars line up and the applicant finds somebody who's going to do that exact same thing, then they'll be moving forward that exact same FEIR. If the project expands or contracts, that is when you have a project change. But until there is something proposed for those boxes, for those lots, there is simply a subdivision plan before the board. The board can ask all the questions they want, but the board can't regulate from a subdivision control something that's not in their subdivision regulations. So we're looking at drainage, lots, access, and those sort of things.
Right, we can only regulate under the authority given to us, and certain authorities have been taken away from us under state and federal jurisdiction in this project.
So once again, there is no project.
Okay.
There is only
there is
a
an urban,
subdivision plan.
excuse I misspoke there. There is an urban renewal plan. It was agreed by the town, the state, and various federal and state agencies. Any change to that plan is required to go through a MIPA process, which was agreed upon by the town, is included in the urban renewal plan, and is part of the state law. Although this was contemplated, and I don't expect that this project is going to come back, the basis for this plan was based on the entirety of the 200-plus acre lot, not on individual lots. So any change to that, and currently it appears that this plan is being broken down into smaller lots prior to the assembly of the full site, which is also required under the permits and certification received through the state. So at the very least, it doesn't hurt to say, is this a plan change notification? No, it's not. Maybe they'll hit the jackpot a second time and get a full blanket approval like the RDA did.
Yeah, so two things. In the FEIR, issued October 12, 2019, project description. As described in the FEIR, this project involves the construction of up to 1.77 million square feet of warehouse distribution uses in 3 buildings, including 1.6 million square foot in Building A, 115,000 square feet in Building B, 600,000 square foot in Building C. The project includes 1,883 parking spaces, including 259 spaces for trucks, trailers, access road, wastewater treatment facility, water, stormwater, electrical, and communication infrastructures and utilities. That is the project of record. 1.7 million square. So what we are doing now is not a project.
So, no,
It is a
I
subdivision.
understand that.
And that
yes.
is why I'm in communication with the folks at MIPA to keep them abreast of what's going on.
But we're talking about the plan and not the project.
We're talking about the plan.
Right. Now, what was presented was conceptual in nature, and great if it had come to pass, and fantastic, things might have moved together a little easier, but right now, we don't, they're not gonna build what was presented.
We're not gonna build anything but
Right,
roads.
they're segmenting the project into smaller developmental parcels, and not knowing what is going to be built in there is, so we don't know the requirements in regards to this project, or whether MIPA feels that it is a plan change or not. Now, MIPA can come back and say, no, this is all fine, go ahead and do what you wanna do. Great, then we can move forward ahead, but this is not in the original plan. Otherwise, we're gonna be taking the original plan as gone through by MIPA as a whole in regards to the whole and total development of the project, because this is just one contemplated project that didn't go through. But a plan change notification is required if the plan is changed. And currently, some of these proposals, from changing the wastewater treatment plant, which I don't see identified on the plans, or no update has been provided here, is part of that. A water tower is required in there too, and maybe that's not an issue in regards to this. Maybe cisterns or water towers for each and every lot in regards to fire suppression or the ability to provide potable water to the sites. But that's changing from the original plan, which was outlined. It's gone through. The taxpayers have put a lot of time and money in this, so has a lot of various state and federal agencies. At the very least, we should be getting a notification of change of plan from MIPA. Whether they're all good with it, or they decide that we're not good with it, it shouldn't be that difficult. It's part of the legal requirements when the plan is changed. So I think,
If I
Yes.
may just clarify really quick as well, like, there's
Who are
no.
you?
Zach Richards, Zach Richards with Bullock.
Thank you, Zach.
Again, there's no project currently proposed, there's
right,
no
we're talking
septics.
about the plan, we're not talking about the projects.
Yes,
This,
sure.
the plan takes this lot as one unit. It says, It is contemplated that the assembled lot may be subdivided in the future.
Yeah, and this is consistent with the MIPA
But
survey.
MIPA treats this as one lot, though, and that's the problem. We're talking about subdividing at this point without the assembled pad-ready sites, without the required
Until there's a
infrastructure.
development identified, then we'll go through any next steps.
Right, because I'm fine with the roadway for the most, aside from a few details, that's great.
Yeah.
But then there's certain limitations on what we are, because we're acting under the authority of state and federal.
Sure, yeah, no, and I just.
Requirements.
We're trying to get you comfortable that we've done our homework, we've done our due diligence.
Yeah.
This is the process, this is consistent, and when an actual development's identified, then we will go through the proper channels with MIPA and an NPC at that time. This does not warrant such a project change.
Well, who decides that?
There's no water infrastructure proposed yet, aside from serving the roadway.
Right.
But there's no water tower. We don't know if a water tower is needed. Again, that's
Right,
part of.
yes, no, I understand that. The water tower might be taken out entirely, so might the individual wastewater treatment plant might be removed
Exactly. We don't
entirely.
know if there's multiple or one, to your point.
Yeah.
Nothing's currently proposed. We've demonstrated
No,
that
that's fine.
we have the ability to properly serve it with sewer and septic to satisfy Board of Health, as they have outlined in their email. But again, beyond putting in the roadway infrastructure and the utilities to serve some future development, which is consistent with the plan, consistent with MIPA, there's nothing beyond that would conflict with any of, again, the state or federal, plans and certificates that have been.
Then there shouldn't have been an issue requesting a determination from MIPA.
This is a subdivision.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry.
First off, the chair has to recognize people before they speak,
Yeah.
and then that person who speaks will identify themselves for our note taker, if you don't mind.
Mr. Bod had his hand up.
That's why we're having these conversations with MIPA, and I'm keeping them in the loop.
Yes.
So the only thing in the FEIR that potentially is a trigger is on page 7, in traffic and transportation, phase 1 prior to occupancy. And those talk about the multimodal improvements for Route 58, the relocation of Montella Street, which has been done, and the construction of internal roadways that can accommodate potential bus service. So as we looked at and talked about at the last meeting about truck traffic
We did, yeah.
and trip circulating, what's typically good for a truck is probably good for a bus. So we just want to make sure that while they're building these things, that they're building them in anticipation of what might go onto the site. So the last thing somebody wants to do is come out and rip out a road and put in an extra 4 foot of pavement. So we want to make sure we have those things based on what we've seen from the traffic movements, from the conversation, the comments from the fire department. They seem to think it's adequate for their infrastructure, for their vehicles and things like that. So we want to make sure that we are setting the table for a future project by making sure the infrastructure that are putting in to date with this subdivision complies with the things that are in the FEIR. And that is the only thing that, through reading through the FEIR, that we sort of touch on at this part of the project. If you're going to build a new road, make sure the road is able to, and those other multimodal infrastructure improvements are in place when you're doing it right now, because whatever you're going to do out there is what you're going to do, and you'll have to comply. One of the things in my very early conversations with MIPA, they were concerned about project segmentation, and so we were well aware of that from our side and from their side, that people are pushing up to those thresholds of 225 trips per day, which is essentially 225 trips a day, or phase 3, 550 trips a day, and they equate a square footage to each of those triggers. So at this point, without any project, there are no changes to MIPA's plan. But we are continuing to communicate with them to make sure we're all on the same page so something doesn't arise later.
Which is fine, and I would like to have a determination from MIPA, but if we're gonna meet with MIPA prior to the taking of action on this public hearing, then that will satisfy my requirements. And I would expect to be included in that meeting.
We'll see what we do. Not everyone wants to have a meeting with an elected official.
I'll sit there and keep my mouth shut.
Not everyone wants to have a meeting with an elected official.
Well, I don't see that it should be a problem. They're a public agency. I'm sure they'll be very receptive. I don't think you can make that determination for them.
I didn't.
No? Then we can ask, can't we?
We can always ask.
Yep. All right. Next question. Oh, I'm sorry. You had your hand raised.
We're good.
Okay.
We're good, thank you. Oh, by the way, George McLaughlin, one of the owners of Route 44, Mr. Chairman. And, just to kind of address what you raised quickly, we have invested a lot of money and a lot of time into this project, 10 years and millions and millions and millions of dollars. And it's a great project. This is a great location. And I'm telling you, dealing with your town, Tom Bott, all of the elected officials, it's been one of my best experiences. And I'm not just blowing smoke at you. I mean that sincerely. You have a great town. You have a town of informed people. I think regular, down-to-earth people, people who know what they're doing. And it's been a great experience. I mean, we had the power of eminent domain through the RDA. They asked me not to use it. I spent 4 or 5 years going around to all of those property owners and paying them more than their properties were worth. And I did it because I thought it was fair. I did it because if someone wanted to buy my property and I didn't particularly want to sell, well, what's the fairest thing to do? Maybe pay them a little more money than it's worth. And so it's been a good experience. I wished, like you folks, we could have done I call it the tuna deal. You're out there fishing for tuna. Maybe it still happens, who knows? But we're fully committed to this. And, as you know, at this point, what we're trying to do, and just to give you a little insight into what my partner and I are thinking is, okay, the economy isn't that great right now. Interest rates are up, everybody's shutting off the spigot, et cetera. But my attitude is, where can you find a piece of property like this right near an interchange, halfway between 495 and Route 3, that's been permitted for 1,770,000 square feet? They just don't make them, okay? So my attitude is, hey, let's spend some more money. Let's do all of the engineering. Let's work with the town. Let's get a road approved that gives us total flexibility. And then, we put the lines back in the water and we start fishing for another tuna or whatever. And so you and I have not spoken. Before you got here tonight, I introduced myself to some of your fellow members, and I just had to get that off my chest, because I think maybe sitting on your side of the table, you're wondering, well, what are they thinking? What's going on here? Let's talk about this. So I figured I'll just take this moment of your time while we're all together and give you my thoughts.
Fantastic, because honestly, it's a great spot. The proposed project is great, but again, we're not the be-all, end-all here. This is coming to us through various other agencies, and we have to act within the limits of our
I
authority.
hear you. And I guess, I know this isn't my first rodeo, as they say. I've been down this road before. And so I guess the secret, and I'm also a lawyer, I'm a recovering lawyer. The sequence of events here is, we don't have a project now. We have this theoretical project that was gonna be a project that, hopefully, nothing more I'd like, and you folks would like, to have something like that come back on board. But here we are, in our position, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to advance that ball down the field, and I'm trying to advance it down the field in a bad economy, so that when the economy recovers, when they start dropping those interest rates again, and when the spigot turns on, hey, this is the only site around that's shovel ready. It's got the power there, it's got the water there, it's got the road in there, bang, we're ready to go. And so that's my goal. And so, as Mr. Bott has just said, what's the process? Now, it's a little different process because we get NEPA and we get the RDA involved, et cetera. But it's basically the subdivision process. What's the first stop? Come in and get your road approved, and hopefully, we've seen Mr. Glynis's comments, and we gotta run them by our people, and my engineer will cringe when I say this, but we really don't have any issues at all. I mean, we've talked about it extensively. We gotta run it past our experts to make sure we're not missing anything, but he thoroughly went through the plan. Everything looks good, everything looks reasonable, and I wanna work with the town, so that's good. So hopefully we'll get our plan approved. And then, when we have a project, and you'll hear this, hopefully, I hope you are at that meeting or on that call with me, because then you can hear it from the horse's mouth. They'll say, yeah, when they have a project, then we look at the project and decide whether it has to be a notice of project change. If we went back to them and said, hey, we got 1,770,000 square feet, and it's all divvied up just like that, they'll say no need for a project change. And then, there's all variations of that. If it's half the size, well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, this, that, and the other thing. But all I'm saying to you in kind of a long-winded fashion is, we're gonna cross all the Ts, we're gonna dot all the Is. I have great pride in everything I do. And when we took that property over, that place was a mess. I mean, it had environmental problems, it had stump dumps, it had mounds all over the place. We really, and I think you people saw that on the walk. We cleaned that place all up. And, so we're just looking forward to hopefully making some money on it one of these days and turning it around. And I know that's gonna happen. It's just a question of when and how, but that's gonna happen.
I would be surprised if anybody sitting on this side or on the other side of the table doesn't want to see this project go forward.
Yeah, good.
But again, because it was taken under governmental action under 121B, we are restricted from certain things, and I won't put the town, myself, or the planning board in jeopardy in regards to that.
No, I hear you.
We don't want you to be in jeopardy.
No,
We want this should have been, with the original project just coming forward, it would have been a quick and easy, but things have changed, and I
Right.
want to make sure that we're well within the box that's been defined for us in
I hear
regards to
you,
this.
I hear you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Glines, definition of major street. We briefly discussed it. When I went through the zoning bylaws, it says a major street, minimum widths and curb cuts at 250 feet and things like that. So what defines a major road?
Yes, so Andy Glines with Fuss and O'Neill. So what I brought up in the last meeting was that a lot of the subdivision rules and regs that the applicant identified in their submission as not being applicable for this project would only not be applicable if these roads would be considered major streets. And as the chair mentioned, the road as designed meets the dimensional requirements for that, but the definition in the subdivision rules and regs is written as major street is a street that, in the opinion of the board, is being or will be used as a thoroughfare between different portions of the town or Carver or between towns, or which will otherwise carry a heavy volume of traffic, generally over 2,000 vehicles per day. So in my opinion, it's really that last criteria for these roads that would make these streets, qualify as major streets. But obviously, as we've discussed in this meeting and multiple other meetings, we don't really know what the ultimate traffic generation is going to be until there's actually projects proposed for these lots. That said, the anticipated development for this, and obviously what the applicant is hoping to develop here, in my opinion, I think that the board could define these as major streets, but since it's a kind of a nuance on that built on a lot of the other ability of the subdivision regs, I wanted to make sure it was part of the decision that the board agrees that there are major streets.
Well, it's a subdivision road.
Yeah,
So what are we looking at? What's the difference between, well, it's clearly not a minor road, but whether it meets the definition of major or not, what's the difference between,
so the road requirements, it's the right-of-way width, where here it's a 60-foot right-of-way, and then I believe the lane widths requirements as well. I don't know if the applicant wants to speak to the road cross-section for the major street as designed.
Zach Richards with Bowler. From my recollection, I think I have my notes somewhere I can dig up, but I think it's 12-foot lanes, 3-foot shoulders, and then a curb and grass strip of about 5 or 6 feet, and a 5-foot sidewalk on either end, and then a smaller grass strip. And that makes up the 60 feet. And again, I think knowing the size of the vehicles, the large trucks that we think will be utilizing these roadways, again, I think, and the curb radii, it's really defined by some of those horizontal curves too, that it makes sense again for it to be designed as a major roadway with those criteria.
All right, next one, typically.
If I
Oh,
just
yep,
chime in,
please
just to
go
make sure
ahead,
we're
Mr.
killing
Bott.
this thing finally. I couldn't agree more. When you look at the number of trips anticipated for an industrial park, something that's going to be operating hopefully at whatever level it's going to be at. The FEIR considered one of those thresholds when the site uses 225 peak hour trips. That's 225 trips at a peak hour. So if you look at the potential, and that's the lowest threshold, given numbers of hours in a week or numbers of hours in a day, I don't see how we don't get to 2,000 at some point and declare it a major street in the opinion of the planning board.
Right, because it's anticipated that it's going to be over 8,000 based on 1.77 million square feet of warehouse space or the full development of the lot as proposed under.
And like I said, the last thing we wanted anybody to see is like, oh, we're going to have to go out here and tear up the edge of the road and put more pavement down.
Yeah.
So we'll be building it from day one with that in mind.
All right, a waiver is requested to allow the index sheet to be at a scale of 1 inch to 200. This is generally one we approve because otherwise the size of the plans would be so large. But it's up to the board again. Mr. Glines recommends a waiver for identifying state and horizontal vertical datums. Request a waiver from using 1929 NGVD. And he recommends it because NAVD is currently the one in use, correct?
Yeah, I think it's outdated regulation, so it's a consistent waiver that I'm recommending approval, but just want to cover all my bases, so.
And when you say provide documentation of construction vehicle queuing and circulation, what exactly do you mean by that?
I believe as the applicant alluded to in their presentation earlier, I was hoping that they'd be able to provide a figure that would show the circulation routes from the proposed intersection of this subdivision to the major highways that would be likely the most efficient traffic routes for really construction vehicles, during the earthwork required for this subdivision, where I know in the past in other projects in town, there's been concerns with which roads are being used for construction vehicles. So I think having the applicant provide a figure and the board, including a condition of approval, solidifying those routes would give the town an opportunity, if those routes weren't followed, to follow up with that with the developer.
Right, you might include heading east on Route 44 as well as, it looks like you only provided west on 44, so you might want to include east.
Correct, yeah, on the slideshow, yeah. So it'll be a little more thorough.
Yeah, I think essentially we're talking about right turn only. You leave the site, you make a right turn onto 58.
But then you can go either way on 44.
Yeah, there's
We're
two.
not going to restrict you from going.
Yes, thank you.
Any more truck routes? And, Section 9, recommended that lot boundaries are determined. Conditions for the planning board to discuss. Stormwater management system, that was based on best management practices.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, which number?
Stormwater management, it's not a number. Stormwater management system was based on the best management practices.
Yeah, so Andy with Fuss & O'Neill, again, so the stormwater management designs in accordance with the stormwater handbook, and one of the recommended conditions of approval regarding stormwater management would be that their drainage report is updated as future projects are proposed, where obviously right now the infiltration basins or basins they're proposing for stormwater management are based on assumed impervious coverage on the future development parcels. So basically I want to have, as development projects are proposed for a site plan review or special permit, that comprehensive drainage report for the entire development is updated as those individual projects are proposed, to make sure that the stormwater pipe conveyance systems are adequately sized, as well as the basins themselves.
And if I may, and this is comparable to what we're doing with Ricketts Pond. A subdivision plan was developed, drainage calculations from place, but with each subsequent development, we do stormwater calcs on that and make sure they don't overwhelm the system that's in place, if I can say that without having an engineer stamp.
Spot on.
All right, thank you, sir.
We are going to want to require consistent access. We've discussed this on the site walk to the radio tower, so that no matter what's going on, that it's accessible.
Understood.
Fire hydrant spec sheet. Fire protection. Electric, telephone, and other utility wires, we discussed it should all be underground. No plans. All right, does anybody in the board have any further questions? I just want to make sure I covered everything in my list.
I have a quick, well,
Please.
on the back page, the first D, add details of proposed signs, including pedestrian crossing signs. Isn't that a little premature until you get a building in and you know where the road is? And
There's going to be an intersection, correct?
well, if you got two buildings across, I don't know, doesn't have to be an intersection for a pedestrian to cross. Could be in the middle of
True, yeah.
the street. But you can't put them in now because you don't know where anything is.
Well, they can always be added later under the individual site plan, but I expect we're talking about.
Yeah, so if I may weigh in, so I agree with you that we won't know where all the pedestrian crossing locations at the future will be, but right now, at the currently proposed crosswalks for the roads, I'd like to have pedestrian crossing signage at those, and then again, as future projects are proposed for site plan review and special permit, if the on-site circulation for those lots makes sense to add additional crossing locations, then additional signage and crosswalks could be, added at that point.
Well, it's like they wanted to know where the exit and exit, you don't know where the building is, so you don't know how you get in.
That's right.
And signposts, you use breakaway signposts?
Preferably, so. Right now, the applicant includes a detail for, I believe, just a stop sign, but not actually the sign post itself, so I just want to make sure that, that was included, and, I don't think it's appropriate for this project, but sometimes there's different mounting requirements needed, if they're bollards or something like that, but I don't think that's necessary at this moment for this project.
As a former auto body business, breakaway signs are, so it doesn't go all the way to the windshield when you hit it. It just pops off.
Further questions? Seeing none, we have some homework to do. When's our next proposed meeting? On
January 9th.
9th. All right, it is a public hearing. Do we have anybody from the public that wishes to question, comment? All right.
Quick question, are you gonna get a copy of the letter that?
Yes, it should be provided to the board and the applicant.
You'll be in your inbox before you leave the room, probably.
Roger that.
All right. I know where I put my public meeting notice here. The chair will accept a motion to continue the public hearing of there it is. On the application of Route 44 Development LLC requesting a definitive subdivision approval entitled Definitive Subdivision Plan for Route 44 Development LLC, Route 44 Commerce Park 2, January 9th, 2024 at 7 PM in Meeting Room 1, Carver Town Hall.
I will make that said motion.
Motion made by Mr. Robinson, seconded by Ms. Sordillo. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Gatsky.
Aye.
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ellen Sedillo says aye.
Don Williams says aye.
And Mr. Shea says aye. Thank you very much. You have a good evening.
Thank you.
Have a good
Merry
holiday.
Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
See you on the other side.
Yeah.
I need your top paper there. No, this one. I mixed all that stuff up. All right. The next order of business is a request for extension for site plan review and special permit, 204 Plymouth Street, solar, map 48 lots 2, 6, and 7.
Good evening.
Good evening,
I'm Gregory Sampson with Sullivan Worcester.
Mr. Sampson.
I'm here on behalf of the applicant to request an acknowledgement of a good cause extension for the solar project proposed at 204 Plymouth Street in Carver. I think the board is aware that this has been extended a couple of occasions. There was a site plan approval and special permit issued. It was issued in June of 2021. The site plan review approval was extended, at the time it was a one-year permit, so that was extended for a year to make it coterminous. And then recently, we extended both for an additional year. And we're asking for recognition of the good cause and for actually 2 more years at this point.
It expires on June 23rd, 2024.
Correct.
Can I tell you that we're very thrilled to see you coming in with so much time ahead and properly planning for this.
I appreciate that, and I feel like I'm doing a roadshow because I have about 20 projects around this area, and all of them are facing the same delays, which is related to the Eversource.
It's been a big problem for us too. It hasn't been any fun for us.
If I may, I think
Please.
there was a story in the Boston Globe about it last weekend, maybe, about hold up for solar projects based on this lack of, Eversource's due diligence on their grid.
Yeah. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I wanted to be here because if there's questions about the process, where the interconnection study is, and just generally speaking, as the board may know, we can't really advance the interconnection process until we have our approvals. So my client wanted to emphasize that this landowner agreement started in 2018 and the interconnection process started right after that. And so this is not a lack of wanting these projects to move forward. But essentially, Eversource got stuck in a study that went to the DPU, required all of these administrative hearings, decisions were reviewed with arbitration panels, and they finally came out and said, well, this is what it's going to cost for each of these projects to interconnect. We said, that's fine.
when are you gonna be ready for us to do that? So now they have to approve this study. The results of the study will come out that says when they'll be ready to accept projects. And that has been pending for most of this calendar year. We're expecting that to be issued at any point, which as soon as we know that, we'll sign the interconnection agreement and we'll be able to schedule construction. Because ideally our project, we want it to time out so that we finish as Eversource finishes their upgrades, and that way we can connect at that time. So we're hopeful that this 2-year request would be adequate. We think, based upon the other studies that have actually released schedules for upgrades, this would align well with that. I'm working on a project in Acushnet, and we know that we're going to be online in 26. So the 2-year extension from 24 to 26 would do it in that case.
Well, typically, we only extend them by a year, but is there any questions from the board?
Why is it a delay? Could you just
Sure.
go over that again?
So the way the whole solar process works is we plan the project and we file for an interconnection, and then Eversource has to go and say, is our infrastructure ready for you to connect? Because they can't have all of this distributed generation. Originally, there was one source of generation and they just moved it across the street. Now they're taking generation sources from different spots. And so the infrastructure has to be ready to accept that. In most cases, until recently, it would be a quick study that say, we have to upgrade 3 transformers and then you can connect. No problem.
Well, they send you the bill.
They send us the bill.
Yeah, forget that part.
That's true. In this case, because of the
They send
number
us the bill.
of projects, that's right, then they send you the bill, all of us the bill. Because of the number of projects in the area, they felt that the infrastructure had to be looked at a more of a global scale. So they created all these group studies where they looked at all these different nodes. There's a Marion Fairhaven node, there's a Plymouth node. Plymouth node is actually broken into 2 study groups. And so they had to come up with this study that said, this is going to be the infrastructure upgrades we'll need to accommodate all of these projects. And then when that's agreed to, what they're going to actually do, then they have the schedule of how it's going to get built out over time. Because in fairness, it is ratepayers' money that's going into building it out, so they have to schedule it appropriately. So that's the problem. And there's just been, they're understaffed at DPU apparently is one story, and they're just too much focus in certain areas. One project moves, the other project falls behind. Wish I had a magic wand to just, I was hoping I'd come here tonight and say, we just got the interconnection services signed, because that happened on another project recently, but we're almost there, hopefully there.
Thank you.
Further questions from the board? Seeing none, the board will accept a motion to approve the extension for Plymouth Street Solar Project to June 23rd, 2025. And that'll give you roughly 18.
2026.
No, well, 2025 would be a year, an extension of a year. And if
I
they,
thought he was asking till 2026.
right, but typically we only give the year because most of these projects have been on the books for a long time, and some of them are just hanging on. You're welcome to come back if it's a problem, but it'll give you 18 months to work it out and get started, and hopefully make this easy and painless for you, so we'll see you again, because you seem well prepared for this. So the chair will accept the motion to extend the special permit and site plan review for Plymouth Street Solar to June 23rd, 2025.
I will make that said motion.
Motion made by Mr. Robinson,
Second?
second by Ms. Sardillo. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Gatsky?
Aye.
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ellen Sordillo says aye.
Don Williams says aye.
And Mr. Shea says aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I expect you're going to be there for another minute. Our next order of business is the request for extension for site plan review and special permit, 40 Fuller Street, map 50, lots 8 and 10A.
Gregory Sampson with Sullivan Worcester on behalf of the proponent Fuller Street, Carver Solar LLC.
Killing it, thank you.
Thank you. Same story. This is a request for further an extension for good cause for this project. The timeline for this one is slightly different. It would be May 25th, 2024 is the current expiration date. With a 1-year extension, we look for May 25th, 2020.
I think we can coincide the two, so it'll give you, I think that shouldn't be an issue for the board.
Just make them both June 23rd?
I would think so.
Okay.
That's great.
That way, if there's any issues, problems, or concerns, you can come on back and we can handle one or both of them at the same time.
Appreciate that.
Any questions from the board?
I believe I have to abstain from this one where I'm in a butter. Is that true?
That's fine. I don't think it's gonna be a squeaker. When in doubt.
Oh, is that the one right behind your house?
Yeah, when in doubt, recuse yourself.
Okay.
I can check the decision. I'm looking through it now.
I don't want to be a problem, you know.
I was just wondering if you voted before, so.
It's on.
Oh, should be on the third
Recused on
vote.
the last one.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Okay. All right, so the chair will accept the motion to extend the site plan and special permit for 40 Fuller Street until June 23rd, 2025.
I'll make said motion.
Motion made by Ms. Sardillo,
Second.
second by Mr. Gatsky. Do we have further discussion amongst the board? Seeing none, Mr. Gatsky.
Aye.
Ellen Sedillo, aye.
Don Williams, aye.
And Mr. Shea says aye, and noted that Mr. Robinson has recused himself. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Appreciate the board's time.
Town planner notes?
Thank you.
Yes, so we have some dates. The select board recently set the date for town meeting. So town meeting will be April 9th, 2024, with April 11th as the second night if needed. Deadline for all warrant articles is January 4th, 2024.
We worked on setting up public, we should have the public hearing before.
So the typical fashion is after the warrant closes, I ask the select board or the town administrator's office for any articles submitted by petitioners or things like that. And then based on having a full list of what's on the agenda, then we schedule those hearings.
And
Much like everything else, we try to schedule those ASAP. So given a date of January 4th as the closing for the articles, I would venture to say that our first meeting would probably be, first hearing would be that first meeting in February.
all right, and we'll have a list of the proposed ones for
We will.
next meeting. All right. Planning board member notes?
Bill Cullum cannot be both present and absent.
On November 14th?
In the notes.
Oh, that's October 20th. That's October 24th. See, I don't think, no, see, I think you got the wrong, because we fixed that and approved these minutes, and we're working on the 11/14/2023 minutes.
Well then, that's, shouldn't have been in my pack. No worries.
Because you called that out last time, I remember. I was
did.
like, oh, that can't have happened twice.
I know.
So we're going to continue the minutes
okay.
for 11/14/2023 until our next meeting. Do we have any planning board member notes? Seeing none, I want to wish everybody happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all the associated holidays. I hope everybody stays safe, happy, and healthy, and we hope to see you all back here after the new year. With that being said, the chair will accept a motion for adjournment.
I will make said motion.
Motion made by Ms. Sardillo,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Gatsky. Any further discussion? Seeing none.
Aye.
Kevin Robinson says aye.
Ellen Sedillo says aye.
Don Lamb says aye.
And Mr. Shea says aye. Thank you very much. Happy holidays.